Hello, hello, hello. It is your favourite sporting waffler. And today, I thought we were going to be talking about Jimmy Tilleen getting sacked from Aberdeen. But a little file slipped across my desk and it said, Wilfred Nancy has been sacked from Celtic. With a result against Rangers, which was not great, 3-1 defeat, played terribly in the second half. I'm not massively surprised, but it sort of came out of nowhere in terms of reporting. It was largely reported he was going to get the game at the weekend, but no, he's left this Tuesday when I'm recording, about 10 minutes ago. I guess it makes sense. 8 games played, 6 defeats, 2 wins, but Celtic did not set him up well. I mean, you look at some factors at play here. The squad is not good. I mean, Johnny Kenny, I don't think is a Celtic quality striker. You saw that when they played. I don't think they had any centre backs outside of Trusty that were really competent. I think Liam Scales again with a Martin O'Neill system works, but with a Wilfred Nancy system, and this is Celtic's problem here, and I'll explain it later, is they built in a manager who doesn't fit the players. And I'll get into it more. We'll look at some stats later, but Celtic were built under Martin O'Neill, defensive solidity. They didn't score a lot, but it didn't matter because they did not concede. I think they conceded 2 goals in 8 games. Under Wilfred Nancy, complete flipper switch. They were good on the offensive side of the ball. They attacked well, their possession, they were really solid. The passing of the ball was really good. They just couldn't defend, especially in transition. And you sort of saw it with Jimmy Tilleen. I will talk about it. I'll make a video on Jimmy Tilleen. But if you can't defend against a counter-attacking team in Scottish football, you will fail. There is no ifs, buts and maybes about it. You will fail to succeed because teams will sit back with 10 men behind the ball and they will hit you on the break. We'll look at Sunday as a really good example because Celtic had plenty of chances to win that game, especially in the first half. They dominated play, they squeezed Rangers up the pitch, and they won the ball high, caused turnovers, put balls in the box, and put Jack Butland under a lot of pressure. He made plenty of saves in the first half, 2 specifically from Johnny Kenny, and the goal from Yang was coming. It was not a goal that Celtic didn't deserve. But in the second half that switched because Danny Roll brought on Diamande for Taylor Asgard, and it gave the midfield of Rangers some more security, and Diamande meant that Raskin could sit deeper, and it became a flat 3 with Diamande slightly forward, Raskin slightly back, and they took over the game, and Celtic could not play their way out of the Rangers midfield press because they hit the 2 midfielders. I think it was definitely McGregor, and it was McCowan to some extent. He was on the wing mostly, but it was definitely McGregor. They just pressed up on him, and it meant that Celtic then were the ones that were turning the ball over a lot. You saw it specifically for the third goal. The second goal was just squeezing in Austin Trusty from a Ralston throw, and they pressed high Rangers and they won the ball. And in that transitional phase, Celtic couldn't cope, and it was the biggest problem for Wilfred Nancy at Celtic. Is his side. He was good in the attacking end. He could not defend with this Celtic squad in transition, or even as a flat back 3. There was too much gap between the wing backs and the centre halves, and it caused so many issues to the Celtic side that were defensively good under Martin O'Neill. And we'll have a look at it because I don't think it's fully Wilfred Nancy's fault. I blame the board, of course, but I also think you can blame the players for this because, and we'll look at it, we'll look at the Dundee United game specifically as a really good example. The amount of XG that Celtic created and did not capitalise on in games is staggering. And I think if you have a striker that can put the ball in the net, if you have wingers that can put the ball in the net, Wilfred Nancy still has a job, or at least is under the less pressure than he is now, which is obviously him being out of a job. You also look at the timing that the board brought him in. I think bringing him in with essentially 3 cup finals, but 1 actual cup final versus St Mirren, which you should win, and Nancy failed to do so, which is a big blot on his Celtic legacy almost, although this whole legacy is a legacy of failure, let's be honest. You look at the Hearts game, which is the first game within 48 hours of signing him. You give him this huge task of being an informed Hearts side at home, which he failed to do so. The Celtic borders, you cannot give a manager with that level of pragmatism in the way he plays, especially on the attacking end of the ball, a lack of pre-season, because you see it happen. They get exposed quickly. The players don't really understand what they're playing with when it comes to Nancy's ideas, and it was a shell shock of the first 3 games because Celtic, Roma and St Mirren caught on to that fact and they beat them convincingly in all 3 games. And they could not defend set pieces, Celtic. They were, like I say, defensively they were terrible, but it's just a bizarre time to bring in a new manager, especially when Gary Neal's doing so well and you're playing this defensive brand of football that's winning you games. Bringing in this whole balls to the walls attacking coach didn't make a lot of sense, especially when you knew that the likes of Kelechi and Nacho are injured and you are adept in the striker position. It was a bizarre decision to make, and in that regard I feel bad for Wilfred Nancy because the keys he had were not very good. The tools he had weren't great. But it's still, you're Celtic and you should be beating the teams in this league. And we will now have a look at why they didn't, the results they had with this fun little camera transition. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are now brought to you live on the computer screen. Let's discuss. And I thought I'd give a good example, which is Celtic's defeat against Dundee United. Celtic played here against Dundee United and they lost 2-1. They, I believe, took the lead, which they did, 2 Dyson Maeda. Johnny Kenny got the assist. Fair play. It was a decent goal. But they conceded twice in 3 minutes, which you should not do. You should not be conceding so quickly after another goal. And let's be honest, this Zach's absolute goal was a beauty of a finish from a corner, but you should not be doing it. It is a switch off that shouldn't happen. But let's look at the statistics, because 73% of the ball to 27%, that's how maths works because it adds up to 100. But if you have this much of the ball, you have to do something with it. And to their credit, they did. 6 big chances, 18 total shots, and an XG of 3.21. You should be winning games of football with an XG of 3.21. You should be scoring multiple goals, not one. You should not be scoring 1 goal from 3.21 XG. 1.45 or 27% is not great either. And of course, if your opponent's got 27% of the ball, you should never allow them to have 17 total shots and 7 on target compared to your 2. Because what this tells me is, not only 6 big chances also tells me this, that Dundee United were clinical, Celtic were not, even testing the goalie. They were off target, and specifically that Maeda chance where you can Google it, he's literally 3 inches from the goal line. He heads it onto the post, which will be a large majority of this XG. Not majority, it'll be a large part of this XG. But still, you cannot have that much XG and have 2 shots on target. And I don't blame Wilfred Nancy for that, because what this tells me is his game plan has worked and they've created a lot of chances that you cannot stick the ball on target, which is a huge problem if you're trying to win football matches. Fun fact. Passing wise, they dominated. Like say XG, they dominated. But this is the big stat, because XG on target, I have no idea how that's higher than their actual XG. I'm not sure how that works. It's just a probability. Yeah, no idea how that works, but Celtics was barely anything, Dundee United's was a lot. That tells you what you need to know. Dundee United made the keeper work, Celtic did not. We'll look at shots inside the box, 11 to 13. Shots off target, 12. Tells you all you need to know about this Celtic game. They dominated, they had a lot of shots, and they were mostly off target. Touches in opposition box, again, is 50-50. And if you've got 70% of the ball, and you've committed 500 passes to 129, you should be having more than you should not be being, this is going to sound crazy, you should not be out-touched in the box. Your opponent should not have more touches in the box than you do. That's not the way to win games of football. And you can look at their performances here. 3-1 defeat, 2-0 defeat against Motherwell, where they got outplayed by Motherwell. 11 shots, 6 on target. This is the game for me that sealed Wilfred Nancy's fate. It may look even, but so many more shots on target, and this has become a problem for Wilfred Nancy. As we've seen here, and we saw against Dundee United, they're not getting shots off on target. They're wasteful in front of goal. But Motherwell deserved to win this game. Win against Livingston. You concede twice in 10 minutes against Livingston. And this is a terrible Livingston team that can't score. And you concede twice in 10 minutes. And you gave up the lead twice. That's a big problem. Even if you won. This game was ridiculous because they dominated it. Actually 3.4 to 0.9. But 2 goals in the 88th minute and the 92nd minute. This goal... Actually, yes, I can, because it was one singular through ball. Look at the state of that. They give it up in the middle of the park, and it is a straight run through for Balakovic. And Kasper Schmeichel makes a terrible error, which he did against Rangers as well. He spilled the ball that he should have saved from Mikey Moore shot. And Kasper Schmeichel has been poor this season, I will not deny that. But you cannot have a team against 10 men, because Aberdeen went down to 10 men just before half-time. You can't let this team have any shots. You should be battering them at home. Regardless if you're Celtic or Cowdenbeath, you should be beating a team at home. Especially an Aberdeen team that doesn't create any chances. And we will talk about them later, because Jimmy Tilling's been sacked, and we will talk about where it went wrong for them. But you cannot do that. And Celtic dominated the game. Only 10 shots on target from 31 is not great. An XG of 3.4, you still underperform your XG despite scoring 3, and that's the biggest problem for me. Wilfred Nancy on the attacking line, good. Defensively, very poor, but his players didn't help him. The players did not finish their dinner enough for my liking. And I think it's one of the reasons why Celtic were so poor in this run. Yes, Wilfred Nancy looked out of his depth a lot of the time, and I will not deny that, especially on the defensive end. But attackingly, I don't think he was helped by his players. And that, I think, is the big thing here.